Future of D&D is vastly approaching, as 2023 stands to be our last full year with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There's been a lot of controversy over the last few weeks over the proposed changes to the open game license, which allows third-party creators to use the mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons for their own systems and content. I'm Loki, and welcome back to the Lair. If you thought that getting out of the OGL trenches was difficult, now we're running across no man's land, as it's been stated recently by a number of credible sources that Wizards of the Coast is looking to monetize everyone, both players and dungeon masters, when D&D 1 is released. Their plan is to have monthly tiers, which will allow you to unlock various perks, benefits, and content drops from Wizards of the Coast, which can be used on their virtual tabletop. This is also for everybody to subscribe to, not just Dungeon Masters. Unlike many players, I don't personally mind Wizards of the Coast investing more resources into developing their virtual space, but I also find it incredibly worrying, and it seems like it's their intention to focus on it and try to monopolize it, rather than it just being one of the things that's their focus. I also detest the idea of having to hand over more of my hard-earned money to a company that is honestly greedy. I pay enough money in the various subscriptions that I have as a Dungeon Master, as well as when I purchase books to improve my games. Inflation's been a real kick in the teeth recently for a lot of us, and we've obviously had to cut back on our spending. It just doesn't really seem right to push players towards subscribing to do what we've always done on the cheap. I have a lot of fun using Roll20, which I've used close to a decade, and I don't really have any plans on changing what I use, unless I decide to learn Foundry. We've already spoken about the OGL fiasco in previous videos, but it seems as if Wizards of the Coast, and more specifically Hasbro, is determined to dig in and do whatever it takes to get what they want, which is control over the TTRPG space. Their statement on the OGL was honestly unprofessional, and was full of contradictions and lies. It was pretty bad damage control, and didn't really nip in the bud any of the issues or complaints that we had as a community actually have. They have decided to basically alienate all of us in order to try and earn more revenue. You know, these people aren't stupid, but their decisions are incredibly careless and disrespectful to many of us who invested our lives into this hobby and community. It's also been leaked that they're planning to not allow Dungeon Masters to include Homebrew through their VTT base tiers of the subscription service, meaning you've got to play shitty old D&D with no changes if you're not willing to pay. Base D&D sucks. I'm just going to say it, okay? I'm just going to say it so everybody hears it. The best thing about D&D, especially 5e, is that it's streamlined and easy to modify. The changes that I've made to 5e has made it playable to me. Actually, no, it's made it good. It's made it great for me. But I've realised that I'm likely going to have to either release my own rule set and make it into a standalone system, or I'm going to have to, I don't know, find a different TTRPG to play when one D&D comes out. Making more people pay to include Homebrew is going to drive away so much business for Dungeons & Dragons, at least on their VTT. And if they try to push other VTTs out of the market, I just don't think it's going to be a positive result for them. For those of you who sit in my comments on every video and say, you should just be playing Pathfinder anyway, well, don't worry, I'm sure lots of people are going to switch over. I just hope they enjoy doing math. There's obviously a lot of reports that the VTT will include AI Dungeon Masters, artificial intelligence Dungeon Masters, that can automatically run content for players, removing the need for a Dungeon Master at a basic level. I'm personally not too sure how to feel about this. I'm sure there's obviously been a lot of people who've already spoken about it, but I just don't imagine an AI Dungeon Master is going to have the quality and value that a real Dungeon Master would have. But it would be a nice opportunity for players who struggle to find a game to play in. All I know is I'm not a really big fan of D&D 1 anyway. I don't like the rule set much, I don't like the direction of the D&D product. I'm an OSR guy, and I prefer low fantasy swords and sorcery settings that encourage verisimilitude and personal growth and triumphs, rather than these huge overarching modules and adventures. D&D is trying to heavily appeal to the new wave of players, and if you're one of those players, I don't mean any ill will, I believe that every player should be able to play the game in the way that they want to, as long as it's not hurting anybody else. I think the last thing that I'm going to say on all of this is that These leaks definitely show that there is disunity within Wizards of the Coast, and there are those within the organisation who stand against these decisions made by corporate. A lot of people who work there love our hobby and play it just as we do. It's the suits that are making these awful, terrible decisions. And whilst cancelling our subscriptions may hurt the company as a whole, it's one of the only ways we can actually get through to $1 billion company like this. What are your thoughts on everything that's happened, and what do you think about the video? Let me know in the comments below. It's been Loki with The Lair. I'll see you guys next time.